Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is Ryan.
And this is Johnny.
In this podcast, we dissect and analyze a movie and enjoy a free-flowing conversation as we go.
Today's movie is The Ritual. Came out in 2017, and it is a Netflix exclusive. This is the story of four friends that take a nice little summer hike in Norway, between Norway and Sweden, to commemorate the loss of their one of their good friends who died 6 months prior. On the way back, they decide to take a shortcut through the woods, and they experience some pretty spooky stuff.
It's a scary movie.
Yeah, it's a horror thriller monster movie.
Disclaimer at the beginning of every podcast. We're going to be talking about everything that happens in the movie, so if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's pretty good.
Yes.
So spoilers throughout.
It's about an hour and a half long, so not that big of an investment.
It was nice and quick. It was efficient.
Yeah, it was efficient. So Ryan.
Oh, yes, that's me.
Why did we pick this movie?
You picked this movie.
Oh.
I hadn't seen it before. You'd seen it. You said it was good.
That's right. I did say it was good.
We wanted to do a little bit lesser known movie. I think was part of it. Part of it. I think was part of it.
It was part of it. Yeah.
I think was part of it.
Yeah, and a different. We hadn't really done like a horror movie.
No, I mean we did a vampire movie, but Interview with the Vampire is not scary.
No,
really.
it's not. It's not a horror movie. I wouldn't call it that.
We watched Magic Mike, which was.
It was horrible.
Look, we don't need to relitigate Magic Mike, but it wasn't horrible.
If you haven't seen Magic Mike, check it out. It's one of our best episodes, I swear.
Oh yeah, the episode of our podcast is better than the movie, I think.
Yeah, I'd recommend watching all of our episodes because they're all the best episodes we've done.
They're at least top 5.
They are top 5. By the way, what episode are we on now?
This is 6.
6? I thought we were on episode... I thought it was 5.
No, this is Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah. That's right. We are on episode 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why we picked it.
And it was scary. It was creepy. It was, it got a lot of the tension and some of the little little jumps out of me.
Yeah.
It was creepy.
It had a really good spooky atmosphere, which is really easy to do in the woods, but the fact that you don't have chirping birds, the only real sound you hear is them talking and branches breaking
from the monster that's chasing.
Some monster, unknown creature is roaming and stalking these four characters. So what do you think of the movie, Ryan?
It was solid. It was good. It kind of let me down a bit by the end. It didn't give me the right kind of climax that I thought it would. The main character kind of does some dumb shit that I don't super love that happens in horror movies. And also it just didn't explain quite enough. But the whole wandering lost in the woods thing has been done before, obviously. And despite that, this movie had me creeped out for most of the running time, and it did its thing well,
Yeah.
It creeped me out from the opening scene. The main character is ordering beers at the bar, and he's walking back to the table with his friends. And just the look on his face, he looked like he was already terrified of something, and it just kind of gave me this little feeling of dread that never really left. Which
Well, he looked miserable a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was because he was the only member of the friend group that hadn't gotten married and had kids. It sounded like he was still single. He had no ring on his fingers.
He was still trying to stretch out his youth, and the rest of them were ready to leave youth behind.
Exactly. And it's relatable. I'm not married. My friends are getting married and having kids now, and I'm just not that I'm sad about it, but it's kind of it sucks.
You see where he's coming from with that.
Yeah, you could kind of relate. But I thought that the four characters were believable. They didn't follow a lot of the horror tropes.
There was a little bit of I think trope is a better word than cliche, because cliche just sounds so negative. There was a little bit of it, but just enough that I appreciated it because it kind of just kept you clued into what was going on.
Which part was that?
Well, the character who you could tell from when they have their own little ritual at the beginning, drinking and pouring one out for their friend in the mountain. Glasses. What was his name?
Dom.
You could tell that he resented Luke when he said, this should never have happened. And the way that the robbery and murder scene was filmed with him kind of like cowering in fear, you as the viewer were meant to see him as maybe at fault, maybe a coward. And then you could tell that Dom felt that way about him. And then, of course, the negative person who is Dom is the one who's punished by being injured, and now they have to take care of him kind of thing. He's like the dead weight now, whereas he was judging Luke for being the bad friend, and now he's the burdensome friend. That's the kind of thing that happens in horror movies, or the creepy dreams and the scary like idol in the attic of the house. Like there was some things that the kind of stuff you've seen in horror movies before, but not in a bad way, just enough to keep you clued in that like, yes, you are watching a horror movie.
Yeah. Well, I thought that... So the monster... Let's get into the monster real quick.
Jumping straight to it.
May as well. It's a pretty big part of the movie. The monster is the bastard son of Loki. Mm-hmm. The Nordic god of mischief. It lives in these woods. It has a following, like almost like a cult. But
almost like a cult?
I wouldn't call them cultists as much as I'd call them slaves.
Okay.
One of the slaves or cultists or whatever you want to call them seems afraid.
Let's call them the worshippers.
The worshippers.
That's how they viewed themselves.
But what they kind of touched upon but didn't really say was that this creature preys on fear and pain and doubt. And I feel like his he would have so Luke, the main character, would have these dream sequences where he would suddenly be walking under fluorescent lights, and then you see shelves, and he's reliving this traumatic experience of his friend getting killed in the liquor store, and him cowering in fear, and his feeling guilt for what happened. And I think that the reason we kept saying that was some kind of influence from this demigod.
Well, yeah, they did, I feel, explain it well enough by the end, that by worshiping this deity and by doing the sacrifices to it, they said it would, grant you unnaturally long life, free of pain and all that,
It was like an escape.
Yeah. Once the worshiper explained that, it was like, okay, I get why he's been reliving all of the pain from that experience from the beginning of the movie when his, friend got murdered right in front of him. Because that's what the monster wants him to focus on wanting to shed, right? Like it's presenting that pain to him over and over, and even exaggerating it. Like his dying friend in one of the visions kind of leans his bloody head over and just goes, coward. And like that didn't happen in real life. That was now like an embellishment from the spirit world. Yeah. And it's trying to make Luke want to become one of the worshippers. And it was definitely a creative take on the, like, usually it's like a satanic cult, join them to gain the power or be crushed under them kind of thing. But just like this wood spirit that actually treated them well. I mean, they seemed like they wanted to still be there doing it, like...
Well, once you submit, it's either submit or die.
Yeah.
So they were given a choice, but it wasn't much of a choice.
That's true.
It wasn't exactly fair.
That's a good point. I would say, speaking of the creature, monster, spirit, the design of it was rad.
Oh, it looks so good.
A lot of the time in these kind of horror movies where a big part of the build-up and the creepy factors that you aren't seeing it for a long time, you just see, a shadow of movement, and you hear the noises, and then someone disappears, and you find them impaled on a tree, for instance. And then when the monster finally gets revealed, you're like, oh, that's kind of lame. And in this, the monster finally gets revealed, and you're like, nice.
It's definitely not the case. Yeah, this monster was done really well. What I liked about it was that half of it was almost like this majestic deer-like creature, the back half. But then when you get to its head, it's the most horrifying fucking thing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's like a torso with antlers for hands and no head.
And
but
underneath face it, near the bottom of the torso part.
Underneath it, it's got extra arms and a face, and it's just extremely creepy. It was a fantastic monster. I felt like it was probably the best part of the movie.
I would disagree there.
You don't think so?
No, because the parts of the movie that featured the monster were, near the end, which like I said, I kind of felt like the movie stopped. It actually stopped being as scary near the end when there was just one character left, especially after Dom is killed. Like, it came down to, either he's gonna be enslaved into the cult, or he's gonna die, or he's gonna get away. And I was okay with any of those three outcomes, and it turned into more of like an action feel than a horror feel. He has a gun and he's punching old ladies in the face and stuff.
Real quick on that, though, the ending wasn't meant to be like a big action sequence. The ending was supposed to be, rather than succumbing to his fear, he overcomes it.
No, I understand that. I don't have a problem with it thematically.
Okay.
I don't mean that the filmmakers did something that didn't make sense to me or that I didn't connect with. It's just, it kind of...
The tone changed?
Yeah, the tone changed. The way that I was feeling changed. Like, I had been full of dread and scares for about an hour plus, and then it turned into a more exciting... And you could tell it was probably building towards the ending that it was, which was almost like an uplifting ending, which I just didn't super dig. And the parts of the movie that had the monster in it the heaviest on screen, which, again, was a great design, super happy with how it looked, was not what I really liked about the movie as a whole. My favorite part was when the group is splintering and the people are scarier than the monster. I love that. It's a big thing with Stephen King. It's one of the reasons why I think Stephen King is so popular and why I like his stuff, is that no matter how horrible the aliens or the monsters or the demons are, like in the movie The Mist, if anybody out there hasn't seen Mist, that's just a great movie. They're surrounded by alien demon creatures that are trying to kill them at every turn. But like the scariest part of The Mist is that the people that are trapped together end up turning on each other. And in this movie, I liked how they did that these people who were friends, at one point, two of the characters are shouting at each other, "You're not my fucking friend anymore." And then one guy runs away and one guy's trying to be the peacekeeper. And like the fact that they could fall apart and maybe harm each other worse than the monster, I thought was really well done.
So you like the ugly side of human nature
in a movie?
In a movie, well, not in everyday life. Yeah, no, that aspect was well done. I did like that. I really liked the characters and how realistic they were. Their reactions to what was happening around them were pretty realistic.
Yeah.
I was trying to imagine myself in those situations, or in that situation, and saying, let's just fucking go back the way we came. It's like, you guys are paranoid, we're going to push through, this is the fastest way, we're going to be there in a day.
Yeah.
And then, they're all trying to rationalize. Essentially, it all starts when they sleep in an abandoned cabin, and upstairs they find a shrine that
creepy
shrine. They don't know what it is. It's freaky. They all go to sleep, and each one of them has something happen to them in the night. In the case of Luke, he wanders outside, and he gets the mark.
Yeah, I liked how that played out over the course of the movie, with like the mark meaning that the beast wants you to be its worshiper, and it doesn't. It's like you're marked for not death.
Yeah.
This movie did a lot of creative things that were the opposite of what a horror movie usually does. But sorry, you continue.
Oh, I was just going to explain that Dom has a vision of his own death and seeing his wife, which
ends up happening.
Both of those things happen. And I think one of the creepiest scenes in the movie is when they find their buddy Phil upstairs, naked, on his knees,
prostrate,
praying to this shrine. It was very disturbing, and he did not understand what was going on.
And for the rest of the movie, Phil was kind of just useless and fucked up.
He was shell-shocked.
Yeah, exactly. He was totally. Everyone else was kind of in some way or another reacting well to the trauma and trying to push through it, and he was more just traumatized.
Well, they could all chalk it up to oh, we all had nightmares.
Right, and he's like,
what kind of fucking nightmare makes you go up and take off all your clothes and pray to a pagan shrine?
Yeah, and he can't handle it. He ends up not being very useful or even with it for the rest of the movie.
It's pretty absent for the most part mentally.
And I thought they did a good job of all the characters being different enough from each other without being a caricature of some type of, just basic one-dimensional character you've seen before. They could have easily had the main conflict of the movie, which was Dom blaming Luke for their friend's death and Luke rejecting that blame.
Well,
They could have easily had that be that each of those two characters had their stance on that issue be like their defining feature, but it only was during when they were fighting over it.
I disagree that Luke did not think that he should be. I felt like Luke blamed himself the whole time.
True.
If you ever look at his face, he just looks miserable.
Yeah.
And I think throughout the entire movie, I mean, he's obviously the one in the most pain, and the reason he's in the most pain is because he feels responsible for the death of his friends and ultimately their being out there.
Yeah, because the reason they were out there was to go on the trip that their dead friend Rob had suggested.
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't have done some bullshit Swedish hiking trip if it wasn't for Rob being dead.
They'd be in Amsterdam.
Yeah, they'd be in Amsterdam or whatever. So yeah, you're right. You're right about that. But they still fought over it because it was kind of a like, I think he had this feeling like, I can blame myself, but you don't get to be mad at me for it. You know, I beat myself up over it enough kind of thing.
Absolutely. And everyone knew. It was like an underlying thing.
Yes.
It didn't take center stage, which I think is what you're saying that you appreciated about it, that they didn't become these cliches. But it was like this underlying tone of whenever someone mentioned like, oh, we shouldn't even be out here, everyone had a look. Mm-hmm. So everyone knew, and everyone had their own feelings about it, though Dom was the only one who articulated those feelings.
Although I will say, they shouldn't have been out in those woods.
No.
But that's not Luke's fault. That's Hutch's fault. That's his name, right? Handsome
Hutch.
Man?
Downton Abbey, man.
See, when I was first watching it, before I got everybody's name straight, they were classified in my head as sad guy, glasses guy, handsome guy, and Indian guy. And so Hutch is handsome
A
guy.
little racist.
What? Phil?
Glasses guy? What the fuck is wrong with you?
I don't know if you're aware of this, but glasses is not a race.
Really?
Yeah.
Bullshit.
You think... What? Are you... It's not... It's not.
So what do you think about like the setting? I really liked I liked that it was shot in the woods. I think woods make for very.
Is glasses a race? All right, I'll get past it.
We'll look it up later.
I'm gonna. It's a teachable moment.
So I think the woods are like the perfect setting for a scary movie because nothing. I mean, it's like isolation as well as unknown threats.
Oh, that's what
woods are a dangerous place.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm sorry. Just back for a sec. They shouldn't have been out in those woods.
Oh,
but it wasn't Luke's fault. It was
Hutch's fault.
It was Hutch's fault. It was Handsome Guy's fault because he was like, "Oh, we'll just take a shortcut through the woods and it will be there."
It's kind of Dom's fault too because he's like, "Fuck it, I hurt myself. Whatever gets us there quicker."
Right, but like, who thinks that going through the untrailed woods is ever faster than the trail? It's like what the other character says. He's like, it's like my scoutmaster used to say, if a shortcut was a shortcut, it'd be called a route.
Well, I don't know if you noticed this, but the character Hutch, while being a generally nice guy, he was kind of an alpha.
I don't think he deserved to be an alpha.
I think that of that group, everyone saw him as the alpha.
They did, but I think it was just because he was handsome.
Sure, but I mean, that's what I'm saying is the mindset of an alpha might be, oh, fucking woods? Whatever, dude. You never gone through a stroll in the woods?
Yeah, but like, at what point do you not think, oh, maybe there's some impassable barrier in there, whether it be a bastard child of Loki monster that wants to kill you all, or just like a river, or like some big fallen trees that are on the map. I mean, there's just so many ways that trying to go through the uncharted woods is just never a good idea.
Well, I guess that could be chalked up to dumb horror movie decision.
That's what I'm saying. That's the kind of horror movie stuff that just... Like, it's one thing, and this happened in this movie too, and this I understand. There's a point where one of the characters says, like, mentions making a call on their cell phone, and the other character goes like, oh, it's not worth it, there's no reception here anyway. It's like, of course, like, every horror movie or suspense or any movie where a cell phone could just solve your problems, they have to put a line into the movie that's like, oh, the cell phones don't work. Of course they don't. And like that I'm fine with. But the characters who are like, oh, it'll be faster and safer to just wander injured into the woods as opposed to this trail that's going to take us a day and a half. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it's credible. It's a credible reason.
People do dumb shit. You're right.
People do dumb shit, and also it sounds like Dom. They were already talking about like, you know what, we're gonna have to fucking carry this guy if we're gonna be walking for 3 more days to get to the the log. I just know we're gonna be carrying his ass.
But then
so he was like, I don't want to do that. This could get us there in a day, according to the map. I mean, he had a map, so
it wasn't according to the map. It was according to like his reading of the map, which was.
But no rivers.
Yeah, you're right.
From looking at a map, you could see it looks like a clear shot. You know what? It's like it's one of those things, but I'm gonna give it a pass. It didn't bug me at all. I'm just like, okay, well, now we have a movie.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And it is credible enough that I'm not sitting there in disbelief like, why the fuck would you go into the woods? Like I do with a lot of bad movies.
Right, where the only reason they do it is because they're like, what, are you scared? Let's just do it.
Yeah.
And in this, it was like, okay, he's injured. We think this could be faster. Let's do it.
There were enough plausible reasons for them to do it.
And like, other than that, there was the fact that sometimes... I understand if you're trying to navigate through the woods at night, you want a flashlight, but there was a couple times where they were hiding in place in the woods and they would turn on their flashlight, and I was like, guys, you're hiding from a thing that has eyes. Why would you turn on your flashlight?
Like, they didn't know it had eyes.
Dude, the hills have eyes. You think the monster doesn't?
Hippos are blind.
But hippos are mean. They'll fuck you up.
So is a bastard son of Loki.
Yeah, that's true. We found that out.
So
Shit.
it was basically like a hippo running through the woods.
But other than a couple of those things, which I'm not really complaining about, I understand. I mostly give it a pass too. I really liked a couple of things they did that turned scary movie conventions upside down. One was that the first really scary moment in the movie, that was like kind of a jump scare, kind of just super eerie and creepy, was when they're asleep in the cabin. There's a lightning storm outside. And at one point when there is a lightning bolt, the light stays on. Like the illumination from the lightning, instead of fading instantaneously like a lightning bolt does, the cabin stays lit like it's daytime. And then you find out a bit, seconds later, that it's the false light from the supermarket dream scene. But like normally in a scary movie, there's light and you feel safer, and then it goes dark, and the dark is scary. And in this, it was like, it's dark, it's nighttime, and that's fine. They're sleeping in the dark. And then when the light stays unnaturally, that's what was scary. And I thought that was super cool. And the other thing is that, like, usually when the monster marks you or targets you, it means you're going to be the one who gets killed. You're marked for death or whatever. And in this, it was like, no, him getting marked is like, oh, you got the mark of the worshiper. It wants to take away your pain. Like, it was the opposite. Everyone else who didn't get the mark was fucked.
Yeah.
And he was the one who was going to potentially survive.
Marked for life.
Yeah, marked for life.
Yeah. That is, I hadn't thought of that.
They did it several times. I know there was more that I noticed, but those are the two that stood out to me.
Well, I was thinking we could move on to kind of like the more technical aspects of the movie.
Sure, that was my favorite part.
The setting, like I said, woods. Very cool. Creepy. I like that there were no sounds of life, only the cracking of branches and twigs.
And the constant eerie soundtrack.
Yeah, you know what? Didn't like the soundtrack.
Yeah, it was too much for me.
The ambient, very mellow, quiet stuff when they're walking is fine, but whenever there was some suspenseful moment, it was too much.
Yeah. It was fine at times, but when it was like every time there was supposed to be quote unquote a jump scare, though there weren't really that many true like jumpy moments, and it would do, a big drum hit or violin screech or whatever, and I was like, all right, I get it. Like, if the music is what's scary, then now it's not scary.
Yeah. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. In fact, I'll say it right now. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of movie that would have done a lot better if it was done similar to Hereditary, where it is a slow burn that builds to something crazy and suspenseful.
Yeah.
This almost seemed like a knockoff Hereditary, because I hold Hereditary pretty high on my horror movies.
Yeah, no, that was... Hereditary is the best horror movie I've seen
in a while.
In like a few years. I mean, I would say the last movie I saw that I would have called the best horror movie I've seen in X years was It Follows.
Fantastic movie.
And
we almost did a review for that movie.
Yeah, we almost did It Follows for this
but
episode.
We both love it so much that we were afraid that we're just going to spend 50 minutes gushing over it.
And no one wants to hear that.
But we would like to recommend it, and it is on Netflix.
If you've not seen It Follows, it's great. Honestly, this movie to me felt more like a knockoff of The Descent.
Yeah, it had a lot of... It did feel a lot like Descent.
And that's not a... I mean, knockoff has negative connotations once again, and I don't mean it to be as negative as that word is.
It was just a lesser... It wasn't as good as The Descent, but it was similar too.
But, like, not a lot of horror movies are as good as The Descent. That one's definitely up there. And that's another one where, like, it really built up slowly. The first half of The Descent...
It was just mostly claustrophobic.
Yeah, it was like the horror of it was just that they were lost, and that was scary enough, and then it got horrific.
Yeah. Oh man, I gotta watch that movie again. That was a great movie.
So this reminded me a little bit of The Descent. Anyway, the score didn't serve the movie that well, I don't think. It was a little bit of a cheap trick or an attempt at one. But when you said, "Oh, let's talk about the more technical aspects of the movie," and I said, "That's my favorite part," I loved the cinematography.
Oh, it was great.
And it was a case of kind of less is more, in that there wasn't a lot of shaky cam running through the woods. There wasn't a lot of like quick cuts or like
it wasn't like a Blair Witch Project.
No. And honestly, man,
thank God.
Fuck the Blair Witch Project. I did not like that movie.
The Blair Witch Project was if this movie and The Witch,
which I've not seen,
which you should see. It was really good.
That's what I hear.
If they had a love child, but that love child was like
on pills.
Yeah. If that love child like burned squirrels with a magnifying glass, or I don't know. Like, I don't know what the sadistic kids are up to these days.
Oh.
I don't know.
We should find out. Let's go find some sadistic kids.
No. Well, just like, it's a troubled child, the Blair Witch Project. And hopefully it grew out of it.
Yeah, I didn't like that movie. But this movie avoided those problems. And a one shot in particular that actually made me, like, pause the movie and go back and watch it again just because I loved it. And it was not a huge deal in the larger scheme of the movie, and it was fairly early on. It's right after they decide they're going to go through the woods. And they first do a big, from the air kind of establishing shot of just misty, scary woods. And then there's like a wide shot of the entrance to the trees. Like, it's clearing is in the foreground, the trees are in the background. And then a split second after that shot starts, our characters just enter the frame and they start trudging towards the trees and then into them. And the whole time, it's just this big wide shot of the forest. And, I bring this up, I feel like this is like my pet term every podcast we do. It was this fantastic visual communication to the audience. It's one of those things that you might not really consciously think about as you're watching it, but it definitely sends a signal to you through the visuals. And it was that the forest is there. Forest is solid. Forest doesn't give a shit about these little people that are about to walk into it. And the camera just stays in one place. Our characters enter the frame, and our characters enter the forest, and the camera doesn't move from this big wide shot of the woods. And to me, that was saying, these little insignificant pissant people do not know what they're about to get themselves into.
It's like the ocean, but made of trees.
You're trying to be dumb, but you're right.
I'm not trying.
You just are. You just are dumb.
Just let me be me. Let me do my thing. Have you seen The Meg?
No, neither of you.
But the Meg is Odin's bastard child of the water. So cool. I thought that everything looked really nice, and I thought the lighting was good. And the nighttime scenes when it's dark.
Yeah.
And they pretty much only relied on, for the most part, I mean, there was some blue light, a little,
There was enough so that you could see what our characters were doing, but no, the lighting was really well done. It wasn't so... Because a lot of the time it's like, they go so dark to try to be scarier, but then you can't really see what's going on.
Yeah.
It was dark enough to let you know that it was nighttime and that our characters couldn't see shit. And then when it was daytime, it just still looked kind of like foggy and shitty, foresty daytime.
Yeah, I thought it would have been kind of neat if they had gone completely natural and had the only light at night come from the flashlights. But it may have been too much.
That would have been too much. That would have given it that weird Blair Witch vibe, I think.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see how it would look, but I was okay with what they did. Yeah, no, visually, I think this movie was great. I think it was pretty low budget.
I would imagine
relatively low budget. I mean, aside from the monster, there wasn't a whole lot in the way of CGI.
Yeah, but the monster got a fair bit of screen time.
Not enough to warrant an extra, like, $5 million or whatever.
No, you're right. It was mostly just like the biggest budget, honestly, was from when they wanted to put the camera up high. They needed big equipment for it. And when it was just a bunch of actors walking around and then some trees would shake for the most part.
And I mean, they had like the deer strung up. That was all real.
Yeah.
That was all props. And then Hutch, spoiler alert, though, this whole podcast is
everything's a spoiler.
And then Hutch in the tree.
Yeah.
That was a really cool scene when he was from the perspective that Luke was at.
Yeah.
It looked like Hutch was looking right at him, which may have fed into his whole "this is my fault" guilt.
Yeah. It was also when he gets captured, it was really well done. Like, we were in Luke's dream, and then Hutch's tent gets like torn away, and then when he wakes up, the tent is actually torn up, and then maybe you see a little bit of like ripply, wavy, shaky trees in the distance, but it's super dark nighttime, and you just hear his screams and then monster noises and then screams, and then like his screams get cut off, and
that's when Luke steps up. That's when he becomes less of a coward, where it's like he's determined to go find him, and it wasn't until Dom said, "If we keep going, we're gonna lose our shit." I
think Dom and Phil both kind of like reined him in, and they were like, "Man, we're gonna get lost out here, and then we're all gonna die. We got to go back, and we'll find him later."
I felt like that was a turning point for Luke's character. That he was finding his courage,
finding his inner alpha. Now that the group alpha was presumably dead.
Yeah. You know what scene I also really liked?
Which one?
There was a very cool scene. It was a wide shot. They're trudging up the hill, and I believe this is after Hutch dies.
So it's just the three of them now?
So it's just the three of them, and they're very weak at this point. They're hoping to find the end. So it's a wide shot. There's trees in the foreground, them climbing up a hill, and then obviously trees in the background. They're in a fucking forest, so obviously there are trees in the background. And it's just this long shot of them climbing up, but then right before the scene ends, something in the background moves.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a quick little scene.
It was creepy as shit, though. I know what you're talking about.
It was a creepy scene. I went back and rewatched it. I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. It almost looks like the god from Princess Mononoke.
Yeah, that's probably where they took some inspiration from this, honestly.
Yeah, it kind of got some of those vibes.
At least for that creature design. It's
like the evil version of the spirit of the forest.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen Princess Mononoke, I know, but it's anime and I'm not a weeaboo. Well,
wrong.
It's a fantastic film and it's worth watching.
Yes.
We've recommended 2 movies, and we're not even done recommending movies. We have 2 recommendations at the end of this.
I will say the 2 we've recommended so far, It Follows and Princess Mononoke, I would recommend stronger than what we're going to talk about at the end.
I would too. But we did see 2 new movies.
We did. And I would recommend both of them. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll talk. I mean, they'd probably be good rentals. But we'll get there.
But the scene you're talking about is another great example of how the filmmakers had a really, really good visual grasp of how to make a horror movie. I also went back and I watched that scene a second time right after it happened, because I had been pretty sure that I had caught the creature like before it moved. I was kind of watching for that kind of a thing because that shot just went on for so long, and I felt pretty proud of myself, so I went back and looked and I was like, yeah, that is where it is. And that scene is great. But they also did a lot of other cool things with the camera work. For instance, the scene where Phil discovers the idol in the attic of the house near the beginning. You see his reaction to it without seeing what it is, and then he calls the other characters up and they run up and you see all of their individual reactions, and then it gives it to the audience. So it's one of those things where the character's reaction is probably scarier than the thing is, because that thing is really scary if it's in real life, which it is to them. You find this creepy altar in this abandoned house in the woods. Like, you're right as a character in that situation to be freaked out, but that's not like a horrifying visual as a moviegoer. So their reaction was scarier, so it gave that to us first. And then there was other times where you'd be seeing what the character was seeing. Like when Luke runs up the hill by himself into the more open forest area, the camera's behind him the whole time, and then as it slowly rotates around him, it makes you think there's going to be something standing right behind him, but there isn't, but it makes you think there's going to be, and then it turns out the monster was in front of him the whole time, and he has to run back away down the hill. Like, they just did very clever work with the camera to maximize the creepy factor.
Which those two scenes could have easily been made into cheap jump scares.
Yep.
Where you open the door, there's the thing. It's an idol, whatever it is, a shrine.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
That's true. As much as we did criticize the score for doing a bit of that, but holy hell, it could have been a lot worse. And it often is a lot worse in these kind of movies.
Yeah, usually with movies like The Conjuring and this kind of weird new wave paranormal activity. I mean, like a lot of the mainstream Insidious, a lot of the mainstream horror movies are just not very good and utilize jump scares to the point that people now equate jump scares to horror.
Which sucks.
Which sucks because jump scares don't leave you with a feeling after you leave the theater.
Although I will say, you mentioned Paranormal Activity. That's the first one, at least. I don't know. I didn't see most of them. The first one was genuinely creepy.
Yeah, just like Saw. But then...
Yeah, exactly.
Then, you know, the big movie execs see how popular it is and think, oh, well, this would make a good franchise. That's when it gets ruined.
Yeah. I remembered what other movie this movie reminded me of, and it's another favorite of mine, and I get a lot of hate for this being one of my favorites.
The Ring.
No, actually.
The Cock Ring.
Oh, yes. I was hard the whole time.
Yeah.
No, Hostel. This movie reminded me of Hostel.
Because they're like fish out of water in a different country and bad things happen to them?
Sort of, but also the fact that there's a lot of build-up where not a lot happens yet, and then...
They call that edging.
Yeah, I was hard the whole time. I already told you.
Sorry, I just... that was for the listeners.
Oh, okay. I mean, all the trees in this movie were just metaphors for my wood.
How were you not supposed to get hard looking at all those phallic trees?
I mean, I told you that one of my nicknames for one of the characters was Handsome. Just Mr. Handsome. I had Mr. Main Character, Mr. Handsome, Mr. Glasses, and Mr. Indian. Those were my names for them in my head when I couldn't keep their names straight yet. Yeah, I know. Glasses are a race. I didn't know.
Now you know, and it's you know what? As long as you're willing to learn.
Where the fuck was I going with this? Hostel.
No,
and also, you know, the first like 30, 40 minutes of Hostel, it's not even really a horror movie. It's kind of just a softcore porn. Okay, this movie didn't do that. But like then there was build up, and then there was horrific things that happened in Hostel, and people were tortured and you get scared. But then like the last 20, 30 minutes or so of Hostel, I want to say, kind of became a little bit of an action movie where this guy is like escaping and fighting back, and it's pretty badass. Like it turns from being a horror movie into more of a thriller, almost action movie.
I mean, it starts off as a suspenseful thriller, psychological kind of, and then when it goes to just being Luke, then it kind of changes tone. It becomes a different kind of movie.
But I think it's in the same way that Hostel did, which is that it turns from being creepy and suspenseful into being more action-oriented. And
oh, yeah. No, sorry. I wasn't listening to you. It turns out that we have the same opinion on it.
Typical man, you know? Never listening to what I'm saying, just wanting to get to his turn to talk.
At least I'm not mansplaining you.
Are you mansplaining to me as a man?
Yeah.
You're going to man hell. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I could see why you would relate it to Hostel, though. I think I saw Hostel once when it came out, and never again, because I'm not into torture porn.
But such a small portion of the running time of Hostel is actually torture. There's enough on there that it's horrible to watch, and you get that that's what's happening in this scenario, but like, not a very big portion of the runtime is torture. And I get that any is too much for some people, but...
Some people?
I feel like I've always liked Hostel more than most people did.
Yeah, it just didn't catch me. Whatever.
So this movie kind of, I guess, to
your
me...
description of the movie fits, and I could see how you could relate it to The Ritual.
Yeah, this one was kind of like a hybrid between The Descent and Hostel in the forest.
And actually kind of Blair Witch Project in a way.
Only that it was...
I mean, Blair Witch Project was bad, but in the premise...
It was scary things in the woods, I guess, if that's where you... Yeah, so fine.
Sure,
it can be those three.
A group of people out in the woods, and things slowly...
Yeah, things deteriorate.
And things get creepy, and everyone blames each other, and they all end up dying. And this movie, by the way, just because Luke... in the end overcomes his fear and his pain does not equate to a happy ending.
No, it doesn't.
He is the adrenaline is going to wear off, and he's going to really dawn on him that all of his friends are dead, and it wouldn't have happened if he hadn't gone to that goddamn liquor store.
Yeah, I was watching this with Stephanie, and at the last shot of the movie, after he's kind of like had his screaming match with the monster and stared down his fears, and he's trudging away out of the forest with his axe, Stephanie just looks over me and goes, "And off to the mental hospital he goes."
Yeah.
And it's true. It wasn't necessarily a happy ending. He's going to be fucked up for life. It was a perfect kind of bittersweet ending where, like, yes, a character did live and lessons were learned and fears were overcome, but, like, all his friends are dead and he's fucked up forever.
Yeah. And you know what? I love a movie with a sad ending.
But this was the happiest of the 3 endings, I think, possible.
God, you're really dark then.
The other 2 possible endings are that Luke dies, which
would have been a better ending for him. That would have been a happier ending for him than knowing that he was responsible for the deaths of 4 of his friends and having to live with that for all his life.
I fully disagree. I think that him living and escaping into freedom gives him at least the opportunity to heal one day.
Maybe.
Death is the next happiest ending. And then the actual bad ending is if he had somehow been enslaved into the worship cult and he had to live on this compound for eternity. Like, that would have been the bad ending.
That would have been that would have been great.
Like, if he somehow, like, succumbs to worshiping the creature and the closing of the movie is him kind of, like, with a glazed look in his eyes starting to, like, speak Swedish and shit, like, then we're getting into bad ending territory. This is the best it could have gone.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, what's your version of a happy ending in this movie?
Well, I mean, of the 3 that you were saying.
Okay, but like go 20 minutes before the end of the movie when he and Dom are chained in the basement, or even when Dom is being sacrificed to the creature, let's say. Like, from there, what's your version of a happy ending that could have realistically happened in the movie?
If he had broken his thumb earlier to escape the bindings and actually saved Dom and they escaped together, and that he had someone who he shared an experience with, who can tell him and reassure him that he's not crazy. So for my ideal happy ending, which isn't what I wanted, I was totally happy with what happened, but a happy ending. You
sick fuck.
A happy ending for the character would be, the happiest outcome could have been him actually escaping with the one person who he had the most conflict with.
Yeah, I did think that maybe they would do that as kind of a full circle thing, like those 2 had the biggest rift, and then they would come back around to having this, like, unshakable bond.
Yeah.
The moment when Dom gets lifted off of his sacrificial thingy and then the monster carries him through the woods and he's, like, cradling his head with his little creepy hands, like, that was super scary and creepy in a way. And then when he just, like, places him onto the tree branch and then it zooms out and there's just, like, the branch coming through his chest, like, that was all very well done. But I think that was where the movie started to lose me. Because from then, it became very clear that one of the 3 endings I've talked about was going to happen. And I didn't think that him just dying was going to be what happened. It was going to be either extreme of him living, either escaping into freedom or being trapped on the compound. And once that had crystallized in my head, I didn't feel the stakes as strongly as I was watching.
How would you have felt if using the Nordic axe, I guess it was Nordic. I just want to say Nordic axe. I think it sounds cool. He had instead killed the creature, but in doing so, he became the new host. He became the monster.
Oh, like Diablo. Did you play Diablo?
Of course I did.
Right, so the end of it, you defeat Diablo.
Yeah, it's a soul stone. He puts it in his forehead.
And you stick the fucking stone in your forehead, and then you, whoever's the main character of the first Diablo, is just the new Diablo in Diablo 2.
Yeah.
So that kind of an ending.
That would have been. How would you have felt it for an ending like that? It would have had to be something that you expected.
It would have had to have been set up more. It would have felt like surprisey for the sake of being a surprise. You know, what a twist. If it had been set up, maybe through earlier exposition that, you know, the body is just a host and this is an eternal creature that travels from one form to another kind of thing, then, like, I would have been cool with it. But within...
For it to work well, would have had to have been a very subtle, like, extremely subtle, because that's the kind of thing that would make for a great surprise shock ending.
Only if it had the right amount of setup beforehand. Given that wasn't what the filmmakers were going for, there was no setup for that, and so if it had just happened, I would not have liked it.
Well, I guess I'm not going to make movies then.
Well, no, you just have to put the right amount.
You don't like my ideas?
No,
you don't think I have what it takes?
I don't.
To make it in Hollywood?
I fucking don't. Maybe Jollywood, Johnny Wood.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
You like stroking your Johnny Wood, don't you?
So, you had mentioned to me outside of the podcast that worldwide this movie grossed about $1 million.
That's what I saw when I looked on IMDb. I think it said like 1.1 million, yeah.
Which is confusing considering that it's a Netflix.
Oh yeah, you said it was
exclusive.
Netflix only.
Well, I did a little snooping around.
Uh-oh.
As in, I went on Google and
Johnny
I
and his
it.
research.
I
Push your
gotta do
glasses
research.
up, Johnny. And put on your smart cap.
It was originally made. It was released in the UK as a movie, in theaters,
Okay.
and it bombed. It did not do well.
Huh.
It was a big floppy-dong.
That's unfortunate.
But
I had my problems with it, but I don't... It doesn't seem like it's a bomb of a movie. I mean, I liked it.
I liked it too. I think it's one of those that just doesn't do well in theaters.
Well, clearly, since it didn't do well in theaters.
I don't think it would have done well in the US either, though. I think it's a good Netflix movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Which, good for them. They were able to sell it to Netflix for almost $5 million. So they made the $1 million. They got an additional $5 million for a movie that probably had a budget of, I'd say, between $1 million and $3 million.
I hope its budget was under $6 million. I mean, like, it wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't like it deserves this high, like, artistic praise. But, like, they clearly put a good amount of effort. And you know what's something we haven't talked about at all? The acting was good.
Acting was, well, that's,
the characters,
we talked about it a little bit.
Maybe touched upon it, but
we talked about how the characters were believable.
Yeah, but they were written believably, I think is more what we were talking about then.
Oh, no,
but, like,
I meant they were written and they performed. They all acted quite well.
Yeah.
They seemed realistic given the circumstances they were in when dealing with something that is beyond reasoning. And, you know, especially, like, in a group when you have to, like, you're not only reassuring yourself, but you're trying to keep everyone together and everyone's just kind of, like, losing it. It was well done. It was believable.
Yeah. So, like, the character writing was good. The atmosphere was really good. The cinematography, the acting, like, a lot of parts of this movie were really well done. And, like, yeah, I would complain mainly about the score and just, like, the script in terms of the plotting, where it ended up. Like, again, I wasn't super stoked on how it ended. And nothing about it...
I was fine with it. I like the creepy church upstairs, and we didn't even talk about that.
Which he burns down, but, like...
Hell yeah.
Okay, here's another thing. What I didn't like about the ending was that there were too many unanswered questions, right? Were those corpses that were, like, gibbering and jabbering in the attic, were those supposed to be the bodies of the people? And their unnatural long life was more like...
Those are the most ancient of worshippers.
Oh.
You are given unending life.
Like, all the way to the point
unnatural life to the point where, yeah, they're
you're like a living corpse.
Those are, like, the oldest worshippers.
Oh, okay, see, you're smart. I didn't get that. To me, I thought that it was supposed to be that, like, that was the body, the true body of the people who were downstairs doing the worshiping and shit, and that the mobile human-looking bodies out there were more of like a avatar or a simulacrum of the corpses upstairs.
You were getting way too complex.
I was in my own fucking head over it. Okay, I like it a little better now then. I like that a lot. That's fucking creepy as shit. That those were just the oldest worshippers and they were just still alive but unable to move because they were all dead.
And then he slowly burns them all to death.
He was doing them all a favor in that case.
I don't know. You didn't get their consent.
Well, you know, at a certain point, if I'm ever the 500-year-old gibbering corpse worshiper in the attic of some Swedish, like, prison hell church for some stupid spirit god, like, burn me, please. You've given
me consent.
You have my undying assumed consent, and I think
I don't assume it. There's no need to assume. You're straight up telling me that you consent to me burning you if you're...
I just think other people would feel that way too. Fuck, man. Think about it. As a human being, do you want to be up there as, like, a living corpse that can't get out of your chair?
Yeah. You look like a goddamn California raisin. I would learn how to play saxophone, and I'd start a band, and I'd call myself the California Raisins.
California Raisin the Dead? That's not cool.
Oh my god. Best band name ever for raisin-looking corpses. I hope we become raisin corpses someday.
Man, I just don't. Burn me.
One thing I also forgot to mention. Most of these guys, they're British, you know, they do a lot of TV shows. British TV shows. The main character, Luke, he looks so familiar.
Yeah, he's been in stuff.
But... he's been in two things that we've talked about on the podcast.
Oh, really?
Yes, he played one of the Andys in Hot Fuzz.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he is, you know, like 10 years older. But also, he was in one of our favorite movies, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom.
Oh, fuck.
He was the evil, greedy corporate assistant to John Hammond 2.0. He was the one that was selling dinosaurs for $2 million.
Oh my god, he was.
He was.
Ugh. I blocked that movie out of my memory for the most part.
Well, when I was looking at his IMDb, I'm like, who was he in Fallen Kingdom?
Oh, the main antagonist.
I had to find a screenshot of him because he was like, oh, he was Mr. So-and-so.
What was his name? Timothy?
Some white dude name.
Well, he's a white dude.
Yeah, Timothy is about...
You racist.
Shut up.
You're the racist against glasses and against white people and all sorts of races.
So, final thoughts.
Final thoughts are that I wouldn't ask you to go out of your way to watch this movie like I would for some other horror movies like It Follows or The Descent or Hostel, for instance. But I give it like a B-. I think, I watched it during the afternoon, so maybe it would have been scarier if I watched it at night, like by the fire. But it was very atmospheric. It was very well shot, well acted, well put together. And you may have, varying opinions on it. I don't know why I'm giving a recommendation. You should only have listened this far if you've already seen it. But my final thoughts are that it was above passable, but nowhere near great, and didn't bring a lot that was truly unique to the genre, but had me interested the whole time.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. I'm not going to give this a letter grade because I don't believe in letter grades.
You do too.
I'm progressive.
Oh my God.
I think right now with the selection on Netflix, I would definitely put this in the top 5 of horror movies or suspense, thriller, whatever. I thought it was a solid movie. It does have a few downfalls, but like nothing compared to a lot of the shit that's been coming out lately.
I mean, horror movies are mostly shit. Let's be honest.
Mainstream horror is just a Vine compilation of jump scares, essentially.
Yes, sadly, you're not far off.
And I think, I do agree that if you don't know what to watch, if you're, laying at home, sitting on the couch, alone with a significant other, with friends, trying to figure out what you want to watch, nighttime, you see this movie, turn the lights off, be quiet. It's a good movie to...
It's a good movie to shut the fuck up in.
It's a good movie to shut the fuck up in. And,
because the sound is used minimally and it's important.
The sound is great. It's a fine movie for just getting a little creeped out with your friends or loved ones, And like I said, compared to most of the shit on Netflix right now.
You know what else it is?
This podcast is brought to you by The Nun. Go see that piece of shit movie. Don't see it. I don't know. It looks bad.
Did you see The Nun?
No, but I know it's going to be bad.
Oh. Well, what are you, a psychic?
All right, go see it. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I just might do both of those things.
So my rating for this movie is between and yee. I'd give this like a.
That's fair enough.
So I'm right in the middle there.
Yeah, just but it's a little spooky.
But you don't make like a noise like unless you're actually caught off guard. Yeah. It's not a natural sound. It's the kind of sound you make and you're like, what the fuck kind of sound did I just make? What is that? And then
you laugh at yourself, but then you also kind of piss your pants because you are scared.
You laugh at yourself so that no one else around you will. You beat them to it.
Smart. So we saw a couple of current movies this past week. Films. Sorry. No, you know what? It's just a movie.
Oh. Roll credits.
The first one we saw was Alpha. Yeah. Oh, aka Johnny.
Alpha.
Pure Alpha.
Absolutely.
Alpha it's a very straightforward movie. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
Don't watch the trailer.
The trailer makes it look really bad.
The trailer is one of the worst trailers I've ever seen. And it's very misleading. Yeah, no. What we were told going into it is know as little as possible, which is kind of like rule of thumb for most movies nowadays.
But the fact that it was my sister who told me that, and she's not normally the type to emphasize that sort of thing. And I think what she meant by go in knowing as little as possible is, dear God, please don't watch the trailer before seeing it. I promise it's just an okay movie.
Well, Sony was involved in that movie, so there you go.
Fucking Sony. Yeah, that explains it.
The only thing worse than their trailers are their movies. It was surprisingly good. It was all right. It was pretty good.
You just ran the gamut of...
I don't think that it's one that you necessarily have to see in theaters, though there are some scenes that look really nice. but I think that for the most part it's worth just kind of waiting and.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the weakest things about the movie was the CGI, so that might be less obvious on a laptop screen.
No.
It's a straightforward adventure survival story, and it was entertaining. It was good.
Yeah. What else did we see? We saw, what the fuck was that movie called?
Black Klansman.
Black Klansman, how could I forget?
Based, apparently semi-loosely, on the true story.
Yeah, if you've seen anything on this movie, it's a Spike Lee movie.
Excuse you.
Joint.
It's a Spike Lee joint.
Sorry, I got it. I corrected myself.
He smokes movies. He produces joints.
So, don't go into this movie thinking it's a comedy, because the premise is almost ridiculous enough that someone might mistake it for a comedy. I kind of thought it was going to be more comedic, but it is not.
It got some chuckles, but in no way would I call it a comedy.
No, it's not a comedy. It was good, but definitely not one that you would need to see in theaters.
No, I don't think so.
I think that that's another. Both these movie recommendations that we saw in theaters, we could have waited.
Yeah.
The message is what's important about that movie.
And I honestly, sometimes in movies that have the kind of message that Black Klansman did, which was that, like, there's a bunch of racists in America and that's a problem, I think it's easy to just assume everyone knows that and view the message as heavy-handed. I don't think you can say that, though, because there's still just so many shithead, racist, fucking Nazi pricks in this country who don't get it. It's not heavy-handed to point that out. But as much as I liked the message and I was entertained by the movie, the delivery kind of fell a little flat for me. It was never as exciting and in-depth as I wanted it to be, and it was fine. I loved the message, and I loved a lot of what happened, but a lot of the how could have been delivered better.
I agree. I think we're pretty much on the same page with this movie. We discussed it after watching it and kind of felt the same way. But I mean, I don't know if Spike Lee joints get on Netflix. I don't think I've ever seen a Spike Lee joint.
I'm sure it'll end up in Redbox or
it'll end up somewhere.
Whatever.
And maybe it might be a good movie to watch with a group of people. Have a discussion afterwards.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, unless.
I would say ideally watch it in a group of mixed race company. Really get the conversational juices flowing.
Yeah, don't watch it with your little bubble.
Yeah, because I think it's the kind of movie that can really provoke some people who may not realize some things or maybe on the fence about some certain issues to go like, hey, maybe this is a problem.
Invite your really anxious friends over too, so that when things start getting heated, you could watch them visibly shrinking into the corner. That's just for you.
Yeah, as personal enjoyment.
Yeah.
The movie within the movie, or whatever.
Breaking the fucking wall.
That's like the fifth wall at that point.
Yep.
Alright, this is Ryan.
And this is Johnny.
Signing off.
See you next time.